Hi, my name is Stacy, and I involuntarily became a participant in one dangerous game in which one has to make a very serious, tricky decision. It all started when my classmate Frank advised everyone to try an online game called Black Spider, which quickly gained popularity among us. The essence of the game was, at first glance, very simple. The Black Spider sends a task, and the player performs it by filming the process on camera. For performing tasks, the player is given points, and the more you play, the further you go through the stages of the game, with more complex tasks. No one knew who the Black Spider was, but he knew a lot about all the players. The tasks were sometimes very difficult, and one guy even had to climb onto a tower crane to take a photo there. After that, many parents signed a petition to ban the game, but nothing came of it. We played for a good reason. The game had a very impressive prize of $100,000 for completing the last stage. The Black Spider responsibly approached each task, and we had no doubt that the reward was real. I joined the game not so long ago, and the first task was very simple. Draw a spider on the wrist with a black pen and send the photo to the game chat. Further task of the first stage, it's also not difficult to come to a certain point in the city and find the note with further instructions quicker than other players. I remained at the initial stage for a long time, although I found a lot of time in the game, unlike other classmates, and had already began to be disappointed in it. And then I still didn't know that the further stages would be a nightmare for me. One Sunday morning, I woke up, picked up the phone, and saw the phrases in my private chat. "I'm watching you." The sender was the Black Spider himself. At that moment, I was really scared, and I looked around the entire room, and then I decided to look out the window. There was no one there. Soon I forgot about that message and taking it to be utter nonsense. Later, my mother sent me to the store, and I had an accidental encounter on the street. My classmate Frank ran up to me and grasped my arm. He said that if I didn't give him all the money, the game was over. I pushed him away and answered that I would call the police if he didn't get away from me. He was very angry and declared in a serious and even frightening voice that I had made the wrong choice. The next day, I wanted to talk to him at school, but he wasn't there. I didn't think anything of it, and during the break, I entered the game again. The Black Spider congratulated me on the transition to the second stage and issued a more difficult and dangerous task for me to turn on the fire alarm at school and not get caught. Turning on the fire alarm was a serious misconduct for which I could get a comment into a personal file. But I, like the other players, was attracted by the main cash prize. Turning on the camera on the phone, I excused myself from class to the bathroom. While there was no one in the corridors, I threw off the alarm protection and pressed the coveted red button. After that, the siren wailed out, and the students began to leave the school in a panic. I got lost in the crowd and ran out with the rest unnoticed. I sent a video to the Black Spider, and he praised me for the work done. He also added that I was one step closer to the coveted prize. There were no bounds to my joy from this news. However, the joy didn't last long. The Black Spider said that there was no turning back, and if I gave up on the game, the video, my act, would be sent straight to the school principal. That got my attention very much, and I thought about the consequences of my actions. For a few days, the spider went silent, and Frank never showed up at school. I hoped that he just got sick, and I was a little scared of his absence in the game and on social networks. None of the class told me what happened to him, but only repeated that I made the wrong choice. One evening, the Black Spider sent the following task to me. After reading his message, I wanted to leave the game right away, but I understood that I couldn't. He wanted me to take $500 from my mother and bring the money to the indicated place. In return, I would receive a pass to the final stage of the game. I decided to perform the task for 2 reasons. Firstly, I didn't want the compromising material on me to get into the hands of the principal. And secondly, I promised myself to reimburse this money in a multiple amount when I take the prize. Then I didn't even think about the fact that the game had never had a winner. The players simply dropped out, having waived the conditions. One day, my mother and I walked around the park, and I had a chance to perform the task. My mother took some pocket money from her wind jacket and went to the truck with ice cream and left her bag with me. Then I turned on the camera again and quietly took my mother's wallet where there was $500. My mom didn't suspect anything, thinking that the wallet accidentally fell out from where we stood in a huge, tight queue for burgers. I was terribly ashamed in front of her, but I didn't tell her the truth. A little later, I headed to the place indicated by the spider to leave the money there. After a couple of hours, the black spider wrote that he accepted the money and that I received a pass to the last stage of the game. There was no trace of joy since I was broken by such blackmail and didn't know what to do. The spider ordered us to wait for further instructions and added that he was closely watching me. As evidence, he said that at the moment, I was in the school cafeteria at the 5th table. I got devastatingly scared because there were a lot of people in the cafeteria and it was impossible to recognize the watcher. On that same day, I accidentally overheard a conversation of classmates about Frank. It turns out that he was at the final stage of the game, and his last task was connected with me and money. He failed and dropped out of the game. Frank left school very upset that day, and no one else saw him. One of them added that Frank even said goodbye to friends from school. I got dizzy from these words. Frank was kidnapped because of me. If this was true, then it was necessary to immediately report it to the police. I wanted to do this, but my enthusiasm was interrupted by a message from the black spider. The spider wrote that he knew about my awareness on Frank. He also added that I had better keep quiet, otherwise my parents will receive a video with the theft of money. That's how, from a hunter, I again turned into a helpless victim. After a couple of days, I received the final task, and after reading it, I dropped the phone out of my hands. I had to say the name of any player, and the black spider would say goodbye forever to him. If I didn't, then he would say goodbye to me. In a panic, I ran home from school to tell my parents everything. I gave up on the game and hoped that I would just be safe at home. I also had correspondence with the black spider, and it could be shown to the police. When I came home, my account in the game disappeared, as well as absolutely all correspondence. It wasn't possible to register a new account, and then I burst into tears and told everything to my parents. At first, they scolded me strongly for my connection with such games, but then they promised that everything would be fine, and this was all a stupid joke of some madman. The next week, I pretended to be sick to stay home. I didn't even go out in the yard being afraid of the black spider, but soon I got tired of sitting at home, and I decided to take a walk with my friends. But in a remote part of the city where the black spider wasn't able to find me, waiting for my friends, I met someone whom I didn't expect to see at all. Frank sadly walked down the street. When he saw me, he turned his back. I convinced him to talk to me and learned the full truth about his disappearance. It turns out that his family had just moved to another part of the city, at which point Frank was transferred to another school. He was very upset by this, and because of this, he couldn't even say goodbye to us. Frank suddenly disappeared for all of us. He didn't get in touch because he didn't have a desire to communicate with anybody. He sent the last message to one of our classmates where he wrote that he made the wrong choice, and all the fault rests with him. Frank was also miffled with me for not letting him finish his last task. That day, he had to take the money from me at any cost, but he couldn't. So the spider said goodbye forever, and his account in the game was blocked. Then I finally realized that the black spider doesn't pose a threat to those who have dropped out of the game. I convinced Frank to run to the police, and he agreed. We were lucky because Frank was very prudent and clever in terms of programming. He kept the correspondence with the black spider in the backing store and protected it in such a way that even the spider couldn't delete the information. He did this to ensure security through blackmail. With this correspondence, we ran to the police. A year later, the game ceased to exist, and the black spider was caught. He turned out to be a senior student from the psychology faculty. The game was his personal experiment, and he knew how to manipulate teens. He played with teenagers and their fears, trying to make as much money as possible. Now he faces a prison term. After this incident, similar games appeared on the internet over and over again. I couldn't stand aside and create a large community on the network to prevent such incidents. Frank helped me with this, and thanks to his skills, we've already banned several of these crazy games.